The Guardian of the Worlds presents The Betrayal of the Past. In a dark 16th of Mosimenes of 41 after Universal War. My dearest journal. Normally, the Guardian of Darkness tends to have a serious demeanor and be somewhat unfriendly with others. So, when I saw him smiling in that confident manner, I knew that whatever he had in mind, it should be a plan that would work perfectly. Or at least, that was what I believed at that moment.
What's your plan?
Asked Arus, as I could feel her somewhat nervous.
There are two scenarios here. Either they come in to attack and kick us out of this spot, or they trying to snatch us up. If it's the first case, I'ma do my thing and make this whole area completely dark so they can see nothing. Then, Ish and you, Arus, gotta focus your energy and unleash your strongest blow.
Explained the seasoned warrior, his eyes gleaming as if he believed his strategy had no flaws and we could emerge victorious effortlessly. And what if they come to capture us? I asked, curious to know what my mate had in mind for that second possibility he had presented to us.
Then we're gonna play it cool and let him capture us. Gonna act like we surrendering and let him think they got us under control.
He replied impassively.
What? Are you out of your mind?
Exclaimed Ish, casting him a disapproving look.
Think about this, man. Only those creatures with the gem know we're here, right? So, if whatever is coming snatches up, it means they taking us straight to those monsters. And bam! Without even trying, we'll be back on the track of the gem.
So, as my seasoned mate continued to explain to us in a hushed voice what his plan was in case we were captured by whatever was leading towards us, I could hear the splashing of their march growing closer and closer. This, in turn, increased my nervousness and fear of facing the unknown. After several minutes of standing there, eagerly waiting to discover what was approaching us, we were able to hear what seemed to be the voices of those beings. That quickly made me realize that it was an army that was drawing towards us. The sinister sounds emitted by those beings sent shivers of horror down my spine. Being smaller than my mates and positioned exactly behind them made me impossible to see what was happening right in front of us. All I could hear was how, as the splashing of their steps sounded right a few meters away from us, those steps suddenly stopped, and then I saw my mates raise their hands. Stepping aside to get a glimpse of what was happening in front of us, I saw an imposing legion of skeletal beings wielding their long pointed spears towards us and starting to surround us. Subsequently, some of those eerie monsters approached us with iron shackles, which they placed on our wrists without any resistance from any of us. For a moment, a great feeling of humiliation washed over my mind. How could I, the honorable Prince of Baldis, end up being the prisoner of such horrible beings? While trying to shake off those feelings, I saw a narrow passage open up within that legion, and we were forced to march back the path that those beings had come from. Dutifully, we followed the instructions of those horrendous monsters, whose emaciated bodies were covered in heavy, rusty blue armor, while sturdy helmets adorned their heads. Despite the worn-out helmets, I could see how deformed the faces of those monsters were, with their raised complexion and eyes completely covered in a peculiar turquoise shade, not even aligned at the same height. Furthermore, many of those abominations barely had a nose, as if it had been taken from them during some conflict. And what can I say about their mouths? They barely had any lips, and in many cases, It seemed like some of their teeth were missing, giving them a calamitous appearance. Enveloped in deep silence, interrupted only by the flow of the natural stream beneath our feet and the splashing of our steps in that cold and narrow passage, we descended along that route. Every now and then, our captors, whose deep inhalations I could hear, would push us when they deemed we were not walking as fast as they wanted. I had no knowledge of where we were headed, but I could sense how the atmosphere in the area was gradually heating up, which made me understand that there was likely some kind of crater deep within that caused the environment to be so hot. My reasoning was further reinforced when I noticed how the stream beneath our feet was slowly evaporating due to the heat of the clouds. Finally, after a while of traversing countless corridors that seemed to lead to other dark chambers or possibly other parts of the labyrinthine cave in which we were trapped, we arrived at a massive chamber illuminated by a large number of torches hanging from the vaulted ceiling. In the center, I could see enormous cages suspended from sturdy chains, housing strange beings which I could barely recognize, motionless and their bodies beginning to decompose, which explained the putrid odor that I had noticed since we entered that place. That sight, along with the satisfaction I saw among our captors as they looked upon those helpless bodies, made me understand how cruel those monsters that had seized us could be. Beneath our feet, I noticed significant cracks through which I could see the magma flowing perpendicular to the passage we had just arrived through, explaining the intense heat of the environment. As I tried to divert my gaze around to examine the chamber more carefully, one of those monsters, who seemed to be the horde leader, emitted a chilling roar that instinctively forced me to look at him. Almost like magic, but not entirely unexpected, those monstrous women who had stolen our precious gem and nearly taken my life appeared.
Well, what do we have here?
Exclaimed one of those horrendous harpies as she approached me, and I could feel the horrifying stench emanating from her mouth.
Did you really think you could enter our home and try to take our gem without any consequences?
Added another of them, hovering in the air.
Here, we'll sentence you to your graves.
Concluded the third, letting out a shrill laughter along with the other two, whose sound seemed as unbearable to me as before. As far as I understood, the plan was actually proceeding as intended. At that moment, I kept my eyes on Yakren, waiting for the signal he had indicated to us, so that we could launch ourselves against those beasts and finally retrieve our precious gem. However, I could see that my mate barely made any gestures. I wanted to believe that, not having seen the gem yet, he had doubts about those monstrous creatures carrying it with them. However, soon we'll notice how one of those diabolical women took our beautiful stone out of her dress and placed it just inches above the ground.
But first, let's see what the future held for you,
Commented that monstrous creature. She let the gem levitate in the air. Quickly, I shifted my gaze to my mate, expecting him to give us the signal to attack those creatures that stood between us and completing our mission. But to my surprise, Yakren made no gesture either.
Bring in the one in black.
I heard one of those creatures say. Immediately, as the legion of deformed-faced monsters cheered jubilantly as if it were a victory, I saw our captors push Yakren towards the gem. My mate, without offering a resistance, complied with what he was told, and after calmly standing before them, he positioned himself in front of the stone. I watched him intently, hoping that now he would finally make the gesture that he had indicated during our conversation. Nevertheless, for the third time, my hope was in vain. When the warrior was close enough to the stone, one of those monstrous creatures, with its bony hands, grabbed his long hair and forced him to direct his gaze towards the gem, which emitted a blinding light that made it almost impossible to see what was happening.
Well, I see a lot of pain here.
I heard the first of those bizarre creatures say. She continued, staying silent for a moment as if waiting to interpret what she saw.
A family broken by demons who tried to end you but failed. Well, they couldn't take your life, but they did destroy it. But let's see what the future holds for you. Wow! A dark future, Yakren.
She said again. I was completely frozen upon hearing that harpy saying my mate's name. How could she even know that?
A war, a planet disappearing. And you reunited with your family. What a beautiful and disheartening ending at the same time.
That unpleasant monster concluded, with an ironic tone of voice as I could feel the radiant glow ceasing. Quickly, I turned my gaze to the warrior, hoping to see what he would do, but what I saw left me completely bewildered. Of being his captors, Yakren turned back, absorbed and with a lost look toward our area. It was as if that event had completely stunned him and left us without our leader. Ish was the next one called by those thunderous creatures. They were, as concerned as I was, cautiously approached the area where those cruel creatures were. Following the same process as with Yakren, they took hold of my companion and forced him to face the gem, once again flooding the room with that shining brilliance.
Pain, so much pain, I can see here.
Another one commented.
It seems you've found a new path to follow, but the past still gnaws at you from within. But you don't have to worry, your past is already behind you, because here you can see how everyone you cared about has died because of the one you serve.
Again, just as the harpy stopped speaking, the glow dissipated, and I saw Ish again with a contorted expression on his face after witnessing that vision. Horrified by what was happening, I looked back at Yakren, hoping that he had recovered from that horrible experience that unexpectedly seemed to have affected someone like him so deeply. Seeing that his expression had not changed much since the last time I had seen him, I feared the worst. Not knowing what to do, I turned my gaze to Arus. The beautiful warrior looked at me with her precious blue eyes, and I could sense her confusion, just like mine.
Bring the youngest!
I heard the third monstrous woman command. I cannot express the horrible thoughts that raced through my mind when I heard those three words. Never before, in my short life, had such a simple phrase evoked such deep and terrible feelings as on that day. Without taking my eyes off my three mates, I headed towards the area where those creatures were, hoping for a miracle, wishing they would snap out of their profound consternation and carry out the plan we had conceived. But that never happened. For a fleeting moment, I cursed Yakren. He was the one who had told us what to do in every situation, so I could not understand what had gone through his mind to leave the three of us abandoned in such a dangerous and critical situation. But it was too late for me as well. I had nothing left but to face what was about to unfold. When I stood before those beasts, with their gruesome faces and those horrifying greenish eyes piercing through me, I could see how they cruelly smiled, with their bizarre mouths, revealing their imperfect and pointed teeth.
At last, we'll know the truth,
Exclaimed another one of those women, leading me to believe that, for some reason, they were waiting to bring me before that magnificent object to discover something about myself that seemed to be of great interest to them. Immediately afterwards, just as they did with the other two warriors, I could feel the cold and bony fingers of one of those creatures grabbing my hair and forcing me to turn my head towards the gem. Then, I saw a powerful glow spread throughout the room, but at the same time, I could see everything that was shown inside the jewel. I would not lie if I said that, at that moment, I would have preferred to go blind rather than witness the horrible events I could observe in that strange liquid inside the stone.
Isn't it him?
I heard the same creature who had summoned me exclaim, clearly confused.